the Lions, like I said, Lions are arguably the best team in football right now. They're definitely playing as one of the best teams in football. And it just kind of made me think, like, people have tried to do this so many times. So what is it? And I'll ask you. I'll give you time to think about it, and I'll just give you my answer. But what is it that worked finally? After years and years of the Lions, but not even just the Lions. There's so many teams that start these rebuilds and they just go nowhere. What did the Lions do differently? I think it was just like the perfect storm. First, your GM is amazing at drafting players.
Right.
Your coach is a former player who is a great leader of men, and at the same time, who played in the game, who understands the game, and can translate that to his players. He has a vision. The GM also has a vision, and for the most part, those visions align with each other. And I think the key factor is right. I think the key thing is I've been in working situations twice now. Well, not twice, but I've been in working situations where there's not new management, but basically there's a new supervisor, right?
Mm.
Or it could be an old supervisor. It doesn't really matter. But the thing is, that supervisor brings in a whole crew of young players or young employees. But everybody is young. Everybody is new. They don't have their mind made up on what is in front of them. They're open ears. They're open to criticism, and they hear the vision, and that's all they know is that vision, and that's what I feel like the Lions have done. Is Brad Holmes hit home runs on so many of these picks, so he got the great talent, and this talent hasn't had any other coach in the NFL besides Dan Campbell, and then year after year, more and more guys come in, and it's the same program, and everybody hasn't had any other coach besides Dan Campbell, AG, and Ben Johnson. So it's just the same thing with no outsider, and in my mind, that's why they are so protective of that locker room, so protective of the culture, so protective of who they bring in and whatnot. And I think it all just combines to just make this perfect storm that is the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. What I would say is, so I've been watching the Lions for a long time, man, and it's been a long time. So when I first started watching the Lions, I feel like they kind of had their own identity back in the '90s with Barry Sanders and Wayne Fonts, Herman Moore, and all those guys. They kind of had an identity, but they didn't have the upper levels, the front office to back them. You know what I'm saying? They had the players, but they didn't have the support. You know what I'm saying? Back then, they weren't getting that one guy that would support them. They weren't, the GMs weren't making the moves to give them the guys that they needed. And then when Barry Sanders and after the Wayne Fonts era, they started hiring coaches that tried to bring another team's identity. Whatever team they were with, they got hired from San Francisco, New England. They tried to bring that culture here and do it that team's way instead of building their own identity. So when we got rid of when Sheila took over and she essentially asked, like, what do we need to build a successful team? And she hired Chris Spielman, and he gave his input. And then they hired Dan Campbell, like you said, who's a former player and understands what players need. And then he hired more players, and they can relate to the players on the field. And then and we got Brad Holmes, who is good and will give you the players that you need to put to accommodate each other. And then Dan Campbell brings that culture into that locker room and essentially, to your point, put guys and build. Brad Holmes drafts those guys, and Dan Campbell implements the thinking that they want inside their head and essentially they just build that culture together. So even when they do bring in a vet, uh, that culture is there. And not only that, but they're not bringing just any vet in. They're bringing guys that can assimilate to that culture essentially. So pretty much, man. I mean, I would just have to say it's the front office and essentially the way they built the team and what and the protection that they do when they bring guys in. It's essentially carefully and scrutinize who they put on this team. And not only that, Brad Holmes is not spending money recklessly. Like every fan in Detroit wants them to go out and make these major moves and spend a whole bunch of money. But Brad Holmes hasn't done that yet. He has stuck to his guns. He has done what has worked, and they have not stepped outside of their game plan from day one.
Bro, you know what while you was talking, it reminded me. That's the biggest thing I took away from that Green Bay game is when you said Dan Campbell's able and the whole coaching staff is able to implement into the minds of these players what they want to see on the field. Is that during that game, bro, it was, they called it a monsoon. And I'm sitting at home watching the game and I'm like I'm not even there, but I just feel miserable. Like I just want to I feel for the players. Like, man, I just want to go home. It's cold, it's wet, it's slippery. Like, and that's how Green Bay looked. Like, God, we just want to get through this game. And dog, on the flip side, the Lions look like, man, it's just another Sunday. They couldn't wait to be out there. They
Right.
came to play. They would have played another 60 minutes if they would have allowed. Like, that's how they look, bro. They just look like, no, man, we here to win this game. We here to play football. We don't care what it looks like. And that's what Jared Goff said after the game. That's what Dan Campbell will play you anywhere. We'll play in anything. And, a lot of times people say that and it's cliche, but bro, like I felt that. Like I could feel that through the TV. Like that team will play anywhere and everywhere because they want to play and they want to win. So it's like, dog, this team is definitely different.
Yeah, man. They were excited to be out there. You could tell they out there having fun, man. And I mean, this essentially, man, the feeling is just different, man. Like you said, these guys don't know what loss is. They just go out there and have fun. They're excited to be out there. They want to make plays. They excited to do the trick plays. That pass, that first touchdown that Amon-Ra Brown made, the double move into the end zone. He was like, "Yeah, man, we've had that play in our we've been working on that play for months, and we finally got a chance to run it." And he was just so excited about it, man. So yeah, man, I feel what you're saying 100%. On the other side, man.